When we look at the Sermon on the Mount, to me, it is just a wonderful thing to be able to behold. Because when I see it, I see the teaching of Christ. The teaching of Jesus is a beautiful thing for the fact that it always leads us somewhere. No matter what part of his teachings we go to, he's leading us to something, to further us in our walk, you can say. And when we see that, it's interesting because when he was teaching, it was for a purpose. Everything he said or did was for a purpose. And when we can see it in that way, it makes all the difference in the world. But it's one thing that I see he does more than anything else. He is desiring us to build our faith. He wants us to take our faith to another level. And that to me is impressive. It's exciting at the same time. If that's his will for my life, then it's up to me to build that faith, placing it in him. And that's where I was talking a little bit ago about that strongholds in your life. Those strongholds will defeat your faith. They will take you away from what you need to do and what God's calling you to. Why is it that people don't come to church? Well, they've put a stronghold in their mind that think there's something better than it doesn't make a difference. How we live our life, as I said yesterday, matters about everything we do. Everything we do has ramification, good or bad. And when we can see it that way, it makes all the difference in the world. So is it any reason that there's so much emphasis placed on the Sermon on the Mount? If I can take these things and build them into my life, it transforms me into who Christ wants me to be. Each one of us takes this message, and it may speak to each one of us in a different way. But at the same time, it speaks to us all in the same way because we're building that faith. Every one of us are on a different level of faith. Different, I hate to say area, but it is an area. There's an area of our life that we have a hard time, depending on our faith, to get us through. Even Hebrews says that sin that so easily besets us. There's that one thing in our life that we all fight, and every one of us fight a different fight. But at the end, it's still the same fight. We're fighting for that right to come to the kingdom and live that kingdom life. As Jesus leads us through the Beatitudes, it's interesting because this last Beatitude that we look at is to me the most interesting one, and is this. It says, "Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when they revile and persecute you and say all kinds of evil against you falsely for my name, for my sake. Rejoice and be exceedingly glad." Exceedingly. Not just a little. We're to be exceedingly glad when those things happen in our life. "For great is your reward in heaven, for so persecuted the prophets who were before you." I like what Ralph had to say because it kind of went right with what I'm talking about. We see these words that come against us, all this persecution that's taking place in our lives as well as around the world. And when we see these things, many times it's hard to deal with. In our country, these are strange words. We don't understand them because we live in a day and an age where our country doesn't face that type of persecution. We have the right and the freedom to do the things that we want to do. I don't worry about an officer coming through that door and saying, "You have to leave and arrest me for preaching the gospel." I don't have to worry about that. The day may come, and I think it's coming soon. But the thing we see in this is that we have the right and the freedom to make a stand. We make that choice in our lives. We have that choice to walk by faith and promote our faith. And this comes to many at a great cost around the world. We think it's simple to walk the Christian life. But to them, they stake their life on it. They place their life on it. And that's why to them, baptism is so important. It should be to us as well. Because when they look at baptism in their life, they're saying, "I'm placing my life in this. By doing this, it could cost me my life." And that's the way they see it. Now, when I was baptized, I didn't have that fear, and neither did you. We have to understand something that is of a great value here. Jesus warned us that these times would come. They would come. Persecution would be there. But we have to ask this question: why will this happen? Why does the persecution have to come? And I think we get this answer in Matthew 10:22. It says, "And ye shall be hated of all men for my name's sake, but he that endureth to the end shall be saved." We have to endure to the end, no matter what. I've told you this before. I love the Rocky movies. I do. I could watch them all the time. Marcia loves them more than I do. But I do. I love them movies. Because to me, I don't watch a man fighting another man. I look at good versus evil. Is what I see. And that's how I look at those. And when Rocky hit them gloves that one day and he said, to the end. Oh, man. I love that part. To the end. To the end. That's how we fight. That's how we endure. We endure to the end because of the fact that at the end of my life, salvation waits. I'll find it then. I walk in salvation, but isn't our salvation future? It is. When it really boils down to it, it's future. We walk in the salvation of the Lord Jesus Christ, but I know that salvation is future. It's something I'm already enjoying now. And to me, that's exciting. But what will this persecution look like? This is what we got to see. Now, know what he tells them in Matthew 24:9. Then shall they deliver you up to and be afflicted, and shall kill you, and ye shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. Well, he gives a good word there, doesn't he? Man, that's some encouraging message right there now. They're going to kill you. They're going to kill you. And you're going to be hated. Nobody wants to be hated. And nobody wants to be killed. Yeah, that's what's coming. And that's what he told them. And every one of them, from that day forward, knew that was their end. Now, how would you like me to stand up here and say, you're going to be killed? Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but you're going to be killed. Well, that's always possible. But what we have to ask is and understand is that God's desire is for all men to be saved. That's his desire. But when we follow Christ, we have to understand something. At that moment, we become a target. We become a target. Whether we want to believe that or not, we do. Whenever I lead somebody to Christ, I make sure I point this out. I got tired of these guys sitting there saying, oh, man, you come to Jesus, everything will be great. Come on. When's that coming? There's days of greatness, but there's also those days, and you better be ready for it. And I've seen many a young Christian come to Christ thinking that their life was going to be all better, and the minute the devil attacked, they didn't know what to do, and they turned away. So when I lead somebody to Christ, I make sure I tell them the day's coming. And it's probably going to be soon that the devil's coming after you. You're going to be tested. Hold the faith. Hold the faith. Because you cannot stop. Because if you stop, you die. You die. And we have to go forward. Satan and his enemies desire one thing, and that's to keep people from Christ. That's his goal. He wants no one to come to Christ. But when they do come to Christ, he does everything in his power to let them walk away. They put thoughts in their mind. I've seen this so many times. People will whack something out of shape so bad, think, what are you doing? That's not even what happened. But that's what they see. And that's how the enemy works in their lives. And it's sad to watch, but it's a very true statement. They try to steal that salvation. They try to steal the blessing. But if we're to look at the worldwide church, it's an amazing thing to see. So many times we get wrapped up in our own little box that we forget what's going on in the world. And there's a big, nasty world out there. And there's people that are serving Christ that run the risk of death every single day. Every day they run that risk. But we see the church is in a state of persecution, great persecution. We had a few months back about the persecuted church. But I went back and got this again. Now watch this. This is just in Nigeria. In Nigeria, over 2,200 Christians were murdered by radical Islamists. This number makes up slightly less than half of the 4,761 Christians killed for their faith worldwide. Grasp that. That's just one country took up half of the deaths of Christians. Now watch what it goes on to say according to Open Door statistics. Most of the Christians killed in 2020 gave up their lives to extremist groups, not governments. We're so focused that the government's coming after us, but it's not so much the government we need to worry about. It's those groups right there. So when we look at this and we see it, it's a staggering thing to how many people each day are dying for Christ. Do the math on that and find out how many that is a day. 22,000 people in the course of a year. I wish I'd have done the math. I can't figure that in my head that quick. But the math on that's unbelievable, how many that adds up to a day. So when I see that, it's a sad thing. Many say, well, I don't live in that place. What do I got to worry about? But it has an effect on your life as well. And that's what we must understand. Just because we don't face death on a daily basis doesn't make this life that we walk any easier. It doesn't make it any easier at all. I think in order to understand this, we need to go to get information from somebody that's went through it and see what they say about us. Now, this is an interesting thing. Back in the days of the Soviet Union, it was a very dangerous place for you to be a Christian. If you were a Christian in those days, it could mean your life. But know what one of them made this comment. It says, in our country, when you make a decision to follow Christ, it's a clear decision because you know that one day you may have to pay for it with your life. But in your country, life is so easy. There is no persecution. It's so much harder to really follow Jesus. Now that's coming from a guy that's going to lay his life down possibly every single day. And he said it's harder for us. That's an awesome statement when you really think about it. But it leads me to this and ask us why. Why would he make that claim? And it's simply this. It's easier because here it's easy to bypass faith. That man lives by faith every single day. Faith of protection. Faith that God's going to meet his needs. I seen a statistic the other day that I was watching, and they were saying the amount of debt of credit cards in our country. In the last, I think it's since the pandemic started, it went not like this. It went like this. How much debt people are in from credit cards. That's just mind-boggling to me. But this is the thing. It's easier for us because we got credit cards. We got bank accounts. We got all these things. Where's our faith? Where's our faith? Where's our faith depend upon our next meal coming in? Where's our faith for that? Because the Bible says for me not to worry about clothing or food. It doesn't tell me to worry about my car or my house or all these things. God said he would take care of these things. It's when we get beyond those things that we try to live above our means. So when I look at these things, it concerns me because if I'm putting my faith in God, why do I run to my credit card? Or why do I do this or this? Because in our mind, we think that we can't do without it. It's an interesting thought. And I've thought about this a lot because it scares me with Christian people today. It does. It truly does scare me. Because where are we going to be when times get hard? Now, if you watch the world today, I'm telling you right now, that day's coming. And it's coming fast. Now, I'm not going to be some fearmonger and stand up here and say everything's going to fall apart. But if you look at the numbers, it's coming. It's coming. And if you look at the things that's taking place in our country, it definitely is coming. Whether it's by war. I mean, there's nobody in this world that's scared of the United States right now. They're not worried about us no more. China's taking this thing right over. And that's a fact. Now, I'm not getting political because I do not preach political. But it does fall with what I'm trying to say. If that day comes, where will my faith be? Now, this concerns me. If we depend so much on our credit cards, our bank accounts, our jobs, and all these things to say, God, I have faith in you, but I'm good right now. Where's our faith going to be when the day comes that we do need those things from him? Where will that day be? I'm telling you honestly, that concerns me as a pastor. It really does. Where is our faith going to be? Where will it be? How many will walk away from the faith because they're going to say, well, God let me down? Really? That concerns me. How many is going to stand? I mean, I look at history, and we don't learn from it. We don't learn from it. I remember my dad telling me when he was a boy how they had gas rationing and all the stuff because of the wars and and all of this. And I listened to my granny, and she told me all the stories of the Depression and how they got through it. And they had to eat things that most of us would say, ain't no way. But how much would we find peace in that day just to have that? Or would we be so mad at God for making us eat such stuff? Interesting thought. Interesting thought. We have to come to the place where we look at this in the right light. We have to realize that we need to be a proclaimer of his name. That's what we have to come to. No matter what takes place in this life, no matter how much persecution comes, this is an eye-opening statement that this guy makes. Now watch what Jesus tells us in Luke 12, 47 through 48. And that servant which knew his Lord's will and prepared not himself, neither did according to his will, shall be beaten with many stripes. But he that knew not and did commit things worthy of stripes shall be beaten with few stripes. For unto whomsoever much is given of him, much shall be required. And to whom men have committed much, of him they will ask the more. Now when we look at this statement, it's a powerful word. Because what I see in this is this. We in this country live with opportunity. We've been given much. The world calls us rich. Now in our minds we think, well, I ain't rich. But to them, we're rich. They will look at any one of our homes and look at our cupboards and see food and see shelter and see heat and air conditioning and all these things and think, man, we got to be rich. And they see that. But where much is given, much is required. How much more then should we be a proclaimer of God's word? How much more should we be a prayer warrior when we have the freedom to walk down the street and cry out to Christ for the salvation of our neighborhoods? How many of us have walked down the street and prayed for those people? It's an interesting thought. The sad part about it, many of us live in excuses. We live in excuses. This goes with what Ralph was talking about. How many of us get upset over a snide remark? Oh, you're just a Christian, and begin to make fun of you. They laugh at what we do. Hurtful remarks and accusations. Nobody likes them. But this makes me think of the kids. Remember when we was kids? That little lyric, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Why is it that we as grown Christians reverse that? Sticks and stones will hurt me. Them words, they may hurt me. And we're afraid to speak out for Christ because somebody may say something bad about us. It's a thought. When I was a young pastor, we used to go visiting every Thursday or every Tuesday. And I don't know how many times I went down the streets of Bowling Green, knocking on doors, handing them tracts and invitations to come to church. And some days you would get frustrated with it. And I forget who I was with. I was with some younger guy, younger than me at that time, and I was pretty young then myself. But I knocked on this door. And sometimes, and don't take this wrong, but you go to a more well-to-do neighborhood, you know you're going to be in trouble. It's just give me. So I walked up there and knocked on this door. It's on Wooster Street in Bowling Green. They got all them big fancy houses over by the police station. Here I am, stupid enough to knock on these doors. I knocked on that door, and I heard this, and I looked at the guy with me, and I said, hang on. This guy, who is it? What do you want? And I'm thinking, oh, this ain't good. And right then, the hair on the back of my neck started going up, and I thought, I am done. We're on right now, boy. And I could hear feet coming. And his wife opened the door, and she wasn't too nice either. And she said something. I said, lady, I got a question for you. If you were to die right now, and you were to go to heaven, would you be allowed in, or would you split hell wide open? That's just how I said it. Man, here he comes. Bam! I just smiled and walked away. I thought, you know what? I'm tired of this. It's my turn. But That was back in my Boulder day. But, that's what happens. But we need to have sometimes that boldness where we say enough's enough and walk by faith, not worrying about what people's going to say or think. I don't want to get off track here, and I might have told you this story, but it fits. We went to another time, we was out calling, we was in a trailer park north of town, and I had this guy with me that was in the church. He's an older fellow than me, and real good man, loved the Lord, soul winner guy, at least I thought. So we walked up to this trailer, and I knocked on the door. I never thought nothing of it, and I didn't pay no attention to him. He was right behind me when I walked up there. And I walked up, knocked on the door. This lady, 40 years old, I'm guessing, opened the door. Real nice. Said, "Can I help you?" And I said who I was, what I was doing there. And she thanked me for giving her the track, and that was it. And I turned around, and he was nowhere to be found. He was gone. Where'd he go? Man, did I miss the rapture? I'm looking around, and I came down the steps, and I seen him. And he was standing over in the dark. He knew her. He knew her. He worked with her. I said, "What are you doing?" He goes, "Oh, I knew that lady." So? All the more reason to stand on there. We might have had a way in. But he was ashamed. I kind of had a whole new outlook on that guy after that. Sad outlook. But to me, when we look at these things, where is the worry when the attacks come? I think when we look at this, Peter was one of the guys that to me you can learn from. But note what Peter learned. Note this verse, 1 Peter 3:13 and 15. "And who is he that will harm you if ye be followers of that which is good?" Man, right here, Peter's thinking of the night he rejected Christ. He's going right back to this thought. Now watch what he says. And if ye suffer for righteousness' sake, happy are ye. And be not afraid of their terror, neither be troubled. But sanctify the Lord God in your hearts, and be ready always to give an answer to every man that asketh you a reason of the hope that is in you, with meekness and fear or reverence. Powerful, powerful statement we learn from a man that rejected Christ. We learn from that. We see the power of that. Peter now does not run from the accusations. He stands and he takes them. I love what John Bunyan wrote here. John Bunyan said this: "Therefore I bind these lies and slanderous accusations to my person as an ornament." Oh, that's good right there. He took honor in it. Now watch what he says. "It belongs to my Christian profession to be vilified, slandered, reproached, reviled, and since all this is nothing but that, as God and my conscience testify, I rejoice in being reproached for Christ's sake." Oh, man. That man had it down. He had it down right there. He was able to stand and tell us to wear it like an ornament. Let it be your merit badge, basically. Wear it with honor that you were suffering for Christ's sake. The Beatitudes teach us this. If you look back at the Beatitudes from the very first one, it goes from poverty to the crucifixion. Tripping over my thick tongue. But when we look at that, we see a powerful thing. This is how far Christ takes this. It gives us that pattern that we're to live, that pattern that we're to give ourselves. And to me, that's such a blessing. We seek that and we enjoy that. It doesn't give us the right to go out and pick a fight. It doesn't give us that right at all, but it does give us the right to stand. And I'm getting way behind here, so I'm going to speed up. Let's go to this verse. Luke 6:28. "Bless them that curse you and pray for them that despitefully use you." That's what we're to do. Not to belittle them, just as Ralph said. Not to belittle them. They're just like us. Just like Ralph said. We were like that once too. That's the way we were. We were one of them. But now the only difference between them and us is we're saved by grace. That's it. That's it. But what we also must see is this, and like I said, I want to speed up here a little bit. We need to see the reward of this. Now, to me, this is awesome. Now, note this. we see two rewards. In verse 10, it says, "For theirs is the kingdom of heaven." That's the blessing that we have. I'm going to receive heaven if I walk with Christ. But now know what happens. In verse 12, it says, "For great is your reward in heaven." Great. It's not something that's minute. It's just a little blessing. This is great reward, something that's worthy. Not I get excited thinking about that. What will that be? What will that be like? We're not only promised kingdom, we are rewarded when we enter in. And it's all by living for Christ. It's all by